do this as a webinar. And I said, yeah, absolutely. So a little background on me. My name is Bill Ballo. I'm originally from the great state of Florida, just in case you couldn't tell with all of the Florida stuff that's behind me. I am now in Madison, Wisconsin. I have been here in Madison, Wisconsin for the past 9 years, and that's mainly because my feet are frozen to the ground and I can't move. I can't leave. So anyway, and my car is frozen up and I wouldn't be able to go anywhere anyway. So I go Packers, nice. So I am, I have been in EMS now for 25 years. I consider myself a retired paramedic. Only this year have I considered myself that, because this was the last year for me to be on the ambulance. My duties have sort of moved elsewhere. Now I was an EMS educator in Florida. And then I was actually the job that I got when I come up here. I was EMS educator and program director eventually of our paramedic program here at Madison College. Pretty good history in EMS. I know some of you are like 25 years. Oh, he's brand new to the job. You know, some of you have probably been in this a lot longer than I have, and that's awesome. So welcome and thank you to everyone that's come today. So what I'm going to talk about today is Madison College, the way we have used virtual reality in our program. So we have used a specific program. So I will talk about that program. It's called a catechist, but only in the sense that that is what we have used at Madison College. I always mention to everyone as well that once we started using the program, the people who developed the program, Arch Virtual, came to me and said, hey, would you like to work for us as an experienced developer as well, sort of as a part-time job? And I said, well, yeah, I can definitely use the money. So I also do part-time work for Arch Virtual, and that is the company that builds the Catechist platform. So just to make sure that that's out of the way and nobody's going, hey, he didn't tell us this was that he worked for them as well. I never want to, anyone to think there's some sort of conflict of interest. So what I'm going to show you is what I'm going to show you and talk about is I'm going to talk about what we did at Madison College, and then I'm going to show you some of the things that we've built at Madison College to make this platform what it is today and what it's going to continue to be in the future. Special shout out to my partner in crime and all of this, and I think someone that I absolutely would never be where I am today without, and that's Carly Brady. She is my manager in the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning, which is where I now reside, and that's why I moved from the EMS program, the paramedic program director position, into our Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning when the pandemic came around. And the reason being is that I've always been kind of an innovator. I've always been willing to bring new ideas and new things into my classes and do things that some other people would look at and go, yeah, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. That's really weird and different. Although what happened, and I'd say one of the only bright spots that came out of the pandemic is that people actually started to look into technology a lot more and go, oh, okay, wait a minute, hold on. I can use technology for this, this, and this. And so a lot of things that I was already doing in my class, I brought those then to the college as a whole. And that was just wonderful to be able to bring those to the college as a whole and to be able to spread it throughout our college and not just in EMS itself. Also a special shout out to Shauna Cargo, who is our vice president. She's, a lot of the driver behind this and has never said no. And that's important. I wouldn't say never said no, but most of the time has not said no to some of the wild ideas that I may come up with. And I really appreciate that. All right. So all the shout outs out of the way, let's start talking about what y'all came here to see today. So I'm not a huge PowerPoint fan. I'd be honest with you, I don't use PowerPoint that much. I didn't even create this PowerPoint, but I'm gonna show a little bit of a PowerPoint, and then we're really gonna get into the main stuff, which is, seeing the environments and seeing what it's actually like in the program itself. So let me go ahead and share so that you can see my PowerPoint here. Again, this is what we do at Madison College. I'm not specifically saying anyone should do this, that, or anything else, but I'm showing you what we do at Madison College and why I think what we have done has been so incredibly successful. So again, Bill Ballo, I am faculty in academic technology in the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning here at Madison College. I moved into that position 2 years ago, just as the pandemic hit. I do have another webinar coming up in September that I definitely think you should attend. And it's about our classroom live equipment and how we brought the classroom to literally anywhere. And we started that 4 years ago, pre-pandemic, and it just has taken off since the pandemic. So come to that one as well. Little pitch for me there. So what I wanted to make sure that we did in utilizing virtual reality at Madison College. So Carly Brady brought me down to Arch Virtual's office and said, "Hey, I want you to look at this because I think you're really going to like this, and I think you can really make this fly." And so this was back in 2019. So I go and I put this headset on and I start looking around, and there's an intubation mannequin in front of me, and I'm like, okay, I'll take it right now. Let's go. Right. Because my brain just went, here are all the things that I could potentially do with this. And I'll show you some of the things that we can do and I have done with this platform. And that's made it just my students have actually really loved it. So I wanted to build on our existing simulation methods. Okay, that was really important. Like, I didn't want to completely reinvent the wheel, and I didn't want people to feel like they weren't still doing simulation. My biggest focus and the focus of the people at Academy and Arch Virtual has been to continue to keep the instructor and the student connected within the platform. And so when I think of Academy, I think of it as a place. It's a place that you go to, like your simulation lab. It's a place that you go to do simulation. And that's the way I leveraged it with my students during the pandemic. And now we have expanded I shouldn't say post-pandemic, because we're not really post-pandemic, but now that we've kind of come back to doing more things in person again. It saved us a lot of time. It did decrease some of our costs, especially when it came to like repairs and stuff like that, instead of having to constantly repair the mannequins, those kind of things. The other benefit to it is that I was able to sort of do a simulation with my students, just me, and so I didn't need a second person to come in and sort of be my operator and that kind of stuff, and that definitely saved time. Also, we have many more diverse avatars within the platform, and that's always a very big conversation at Madison College, is that we want to make sure that we're increasing diversity and inclusion as much as possible. And so that was a very big important step in creating these. Now there's sort of some what I would almost say cons, but I think that the technology is catching up. And one of the main ones is that I'm not doing fine motor skills. I'm not getting haptics. I'm not getting like real feedback. So if I'm intubating a mannequin, I'm going through all of the steps of intubating the mannequin. I'm seeing the glottic opening. I'm doing all the visualization. I'm doing all of that. That doesn't change, but I'm not feeling what it's like to actually lift the laryngoscope and displace jaw and stuff like that. I'm not actually getting that feel. But if you followed virtual reality at all, the gloves, I call it the Nintendo Power Glove on steroids, is those are starting to come into existence. Again, as time goes on, those will probably increase. And then what I want for my students is I want my students to actually experience, an environment. I wanted them to feel like they were actually there in the environment. So the cool thing about it is that the students were able to log in a couple of different ways. Okay, so the pinnacle, what we wanted everybody to do was to actually put on the headset, right? To be in the headset, to be in a simulation, to feel what it's like to be in there, to be able to pick everything up, move things around, put the pads on the patient, do all of the steps necessary to care for their patient. But we also understood that the ability to get students connected with the equipment and all of that kind of sometimes could get kind of difficult. So where we started out and where I started out was just making 3D recordings of really tough things that my students had a hard time understanding. A good example was heart blocks. And the first thing I asked Arch Virtual for was I wanted a really big heart that I could like go into and I could actually show what it looks like. Well, you know, where are the Purkinje fibers? Okay, where is that bundle of His that we talked about, right? And so I wanted my students to understand it better graphically and visually. I had the plastic heart, I had a doc cam, I was holding the plastic heart under the doc cam and saying, okay, you see all of that. But I wanted something that was much more interesting and much more interactive for my student, and that eventually I could have them come in and interact with as well. Pick it up, look at it. I could stand there next to them, you know, being in, it's multiplayer, so being in there with them and being able to talk to them and being able to teach that way. The student can also access from non-VR mode. Okay, now if their computer is, it doesn't have to be like a super duper computer. My work laptop works just fine for downloading a catechist and then running it in viewer mode, which you're going to see today. It works just fine for doing that. But we did find that some of the students, you know, they didn't quite have the computer. Maybe they had a Chromebook or something like that. And so what we did then was we transferred it over to our VDI, our Madison College VDI, and then the students were able to access the VDI and able to access the program. The other option that we had was have everybody come together on Zoom or WebEx or Microsoft Teams or whatever it may be. And although they may not actually be in there doing the haptic, you know, or not doing the haptics, but doing the actions, putting the pads on, putting the 12-lead ECG on, those kind of things, they are telling me exactly what to do, how to do it. So they're going through all of that critical thinking that leads up to it. A good example is Dr. Nick Slayman. He is a pediatric intensivist at DuPont Medical Center, and he utilizes it with his residents, brings them in and has them go through a full pediatric cardiac arrest, and they have to tell him exactly what they need him to do and how they're going to do it. And you can watch the stress level. I've watched a couple of them. You can watch the stress level really rise on the students, even though they're viewing it like you are today via Zoom or WebEx or Microsoft Teams. Obviously, having students on campus putting headsets on, that has been our gold standard. We do have that capability. And we also are building our extended reality center right now, which will have 12 bays, and the students will be able to go in and actually do full simulations with their instructor. So the instructor can go in one bay and the students can go in the other, and they can all be together in that sim lab, in that virtual sim lab. And so that's what we focused on. And I think of it as a place. Again, it's a place that you go like your simulation lab, and they're fully immersed. They're actually in that environment. So this was our attempt at connecting all of our campuses and our ideas of what campuses have become, right? So we have the remote campus, we have the virtual campus. We are trying to bring all of those simulations together. You know, even if I'm in class, when I was in class teaching cardiology with this, I was picking up a heart and I was showing it to my students, and it was projected on the screen. And so they were seeing everything that I was showing them. There's a little camera in there, and I pick it up to the camera and I show them, and they're seeing it projected on the screen while I'm actually in the headset in virtual reality. So we looked at our synchronous, we looked at our asynchronous, and our focus pretty quickly was that we wanted more synchronous. We wanted our students to join us. We wanted our students either to join as observers in WebEx, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, whatever it may be, or we wanted our students to actually be in VR with us, with the headset on. Now, the other way that I did it, and my students actually found it pretty easy to access and to get around, was to do it in viewer mode, which again, you're going to see here in a couple of minutes, where the students would come in viewer mode. I was in VR, and I was acting as their hands in VR, and they were just telling me what to do and going through all of those steps. Now, that wasn't really our high fidelity simulation. Our high fidelity simulation was when we put the student in the headset. We had them actually in the headset and doing everything on their own, right? And they you know, 2 or 3 students were in there, and they were all working together as a team. So I'm going to kind of skip past all of this because I'm going to show you the simulation manager. I'm going to show you what all of this looks like, okay? So the view that you're sort of seeing on the left here is from viewer mode. That's the viewer mode view. And as sort of a sim tech or even as an instructor, I can sit there in viewer mode and I still have control over the avatar that's in virtual reality. So I can control them. I can have them sit up. I can have them down. I can put the mask on, blanket, all of that kind of stuff. And then depending on which simulation you're in, there's more things that you can do and there's less things that you can do depending on the avatar that's in there. The other thing that we focused on at Madison College was custom development. And so we said, hey, here
Hi, everyone. It looks like we are having some technical issues here, so we are working on that right now, and we should be back up shortly. I apologize for the inconvenience. Oh, I think you're muted, Bill. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, no problem. Little internet outage there. Happens all the time.
Oh yeah, no worries.
We get used to that now in this virtual environment. So, all right, so let me go back to sharing my screen here. Pull that back up, and here we go. Okay, so I'll go back one slide because I think I was on this slide when it cut out on me. I will show you some of the environments in there. I won't mess around too much on the PowerPoint with showing all the environments, or even that's like a minimal amount of environments that are in there. Let me open this back up to full view. All right, scene editing. That was the other thing, is I wanted to be able to edit the scene sort of on the fly if I could, bring things into the scene, take things out of the scene, those kind of things, and be able to, for example, one of my students, when they were doing the dynamic cardiology, they went over and they started talking to the patient's wife, and they realized, this is not a good idea. Let's get her out of here. Let's make sure she's out of this, out of the room, so that she's not sitting here watching us do compressions and go through cardiac arrest and on her husband. And so I went in and immediately deleted that avatar out of the scene. Like, okay, you have moved her out of the scene, deleted her out of the scene. That way she was gone. By the way, that was the only student that did that. We'll talk about that in a second here. I focused on a layered approach. So I started off with just doing sort of 3D instruction that sometimes I would bring into 2D. But then I would do 3D recordings and have my students go in to the program and watch the recording. I'd say, all right, you need to go, here's your assignment, go into the program, watch the recording, and then come back and answer these questions, okay? And so they actually had to go in and watch the 3D recording. In the 3D recording, they're able to move around, they're able to get into my position, watch what I'm doing, see it from any angle there that works best for them. So it was much more interactive rather than just sort of that 2D. But if you want to see what some of that 2D looks like, if you search my last name, Ballo, and then Medic, M-E-D-I-C, on YouTube, that's my YouTube channel. There's some stuff on there that you can see that I've done. And you can see me operating an HVAC simulator and realize I know nothing about HVAC. Diversity of character, we have a bunch of different that was one of the main things at Madison College. Really, we were one of the reasons that we wanted some custom development as well, was to be able to develop a diverse cast of characters, so to speak. So expert 3D instruction, you'll see a 3D recording in here today, probably from Dr. Slayman, that just, he's a pediatric intensivist. So he goes over setting up your cart for intubation, being prepared for your intubation, and then goes through all of the steps of the intubation. the learner can go in and watch that and play it back. They can also then go in and do it, right? They can actually do it as well. And then they can as well make a recording so that if Dr. Slayman wanted to see what they had done, he could go back and see that. We also put in some follow-up questions. It's not that's not really my favorite way to do follow-up questions. I kind of like to do it, you know, like in Blackboard or something like that, where I can have it automatically drop into my grading, you know, because I do it for grades. But you can do some, you know, little questions in here. Not really a whole lot of like feedback, like did they answer the questions right? But just sort of those, like at the end of the textbook, right, where you have those questions that that are just, you know, here are some things to think about in terms of, you know, what's next for you, right? All right, so enough talk, enough of the PowerPoint. I'm going to stop sharing here just for a second, and I'm going to get this PowerPoint off of my computer here and cancel. Let's just minimize that. All right, so let me open a Catechus here on the back end. I'm going to go into my room, so I'm not going to share yet because I'm putting my private room number in. So I don't want anybody just going in there and you know, playing around in my room, playing with all my stuff. So, all right, let me restart here. Any questions while I'm getting this pulled up? I forgot to open it and have it ready to go. I don't have the Q&A up. I guess I should bring the Q&A up. I have the chat up. And hello, West Virginia. Oh, thanks. Great presentation. Hello, New York City. I see the Go Packers in there. I will admit I'm not actually a Packers fan. It's really funny. I'm born and raised in Florida. I'm a Buffalo Bills fan. I became a Bills fan in 1984. That's a long story. Hello, Louisiana. Bo, I think you were the one that said Go Tigers, right? Maitland, Florida, Go Gators. All right. Hello, Maitland. That's correct. Illinois. Ah, hey, kind of close. Hello. Are your feet frozen to the ground too? Mine are finally starting to thaw out though. Bills Mafia. You know it, Brian. You know it. Georgia. Hello. Austin, Texas. All right. Yankees fan in New England. Oh, that's got to be tough. That has got to be tough. Yeah, I saw that. Softball. Yeah, kind of upsetting. All right, let me share sound. Let me optimize for video, and here we go. So this was actually what I started off with. Now, I don't use this scene anymore because I've kind of graduated on to bigger and better scenes. But my students will remember this because this is where so what I had them do is I had them go through and see 6 patients, right? 4 in this emergency room here. Now, in order to move in this is viewer mode. So this is the way a lot of my students came into it, was they just go right and left with their head by clicking and holding on the right button on their mouse, okay? Or if they're on a laptop, they can trackpad, so control and then trackpad. And then forward is forward, back is back, left is left, right is right. For any gamers, it works on the WASD as well. So my students would come in and basically here they'd see Miles sitting here looking kind of angry. And I was already in there. I was in and I was in my headset. So I was in virtual reality mode. And basically my students would just come in and tell me, hey, this is what I want to do. Now, if they're in VR mode, if they come in VR themselves, did I lose Zoom again? I hope not. Oh, no, I didn't. If they come in VR themselves, then they do it all themselves. I don't pick things up for them. But you can also see in viewer mode, like they can do some stuff, like they want to put CPAP on this patient, they can do that. Now, what would happen is because I have controls of this patient and this avatar on the back end using my simulation manager, which I'm going to show you right now, because I'm going to open the menu here, and then my simulation manager is right here. So I had controls over this mannequin or this avatar, right? So if I wanted his face mask on or off, let's say I want his shirt off, I want his blanket off, right? I want his arms more relaxed, and I want him to be looking at the individual who's talking to him, right? And then I would act as the patient. I would actually voice the patient. So I would be in there, and I do a really great voicing of an old man. I'm actually really good at that, and I'm kind of sad about that too. But I do a really great voicing of an old man. So I'd be telling him I came in with chest pain today, not feeling well, I'm having a lot of trouble breathing. And then we have the lung sound board. So when the student would come over and say, pick up the stethoscope and say, okay, I want to listen to those lung sounds, I can play his lung sounds. And I could determine what lung sounds I wanted. So if I wanted it to be easy instead, if I wanted more cough, I could do that. Okay. Or I could just have none, or I could have normal vesicular lung sounds. And so I would just kind of make that choice. Obviously with this patient, he was having crackles. So they would listen to that. They would start to make a treatment plan. Okay, here's what I want to do. Here are the things that this patient needs. And then they would actually do that, right? They could also ask for the things that were normally in an ER. So they could ask for a chest x-ray. They could ask for labs, and all of those things were available for me to pull up for them in here, right? So then they'd move on and they'd go to the next patient. And this gentleman right here is actually from Sanford, Florida. He is a truck driver from Sanford, Florida. And he actually has a simple pneumothorax that turns into tension pneumothorax. So when they initially do their evaluation on him, he has simple pneumothorax. And then when they come back to him, it has developed into tension pneumothorax, and they have to treat accordingly. And over on our table over here, we have the things that are necessary to treat accordingly. Our next patient was an asthma patient, and they would visit this gentleman. They could give him his nebulizer. They would do all of the evaluation on him, and lung sounds again. And then this patient, and this was just a repeat of another gentleman. Like I said, this is one that I used. This thing is at least 2 years old. I used this a ways back with my students. I'll show you the updated version. And this gentleman had COVID pneumonia. So now on the back end, I was changing the parameters on Miles, who is back here, right? And so when they would finally come back to see how Miles is doing, they would come back to speak to Miles. Hey, Miles, how you feeling? I would go into my simulation manager before they had gotten back, and I would drop his heart rate, I'd raise his heart rate. I would drop his SpO2, which was already kind of dropped. I'd drop his blood pressure, right? I'd start to tank him out. So you can see on the monitor there, as soon as I hit set values, it now changes those values, and I could even change waveforms as well. So I could put it into, if I wanted him in SVT or something like that, or just sinus tach. I could have him in sinus tach, right? And so I would have all of that set. I'd also have him kind of sweaty, and then his mental status was declining. So now the student had to make the decision. Well, what do I do? Okay, many of them said, hey, let's get that CPAP off of him, because they're realizing now, I'm impinging on that Frank Starling curve, and I've now flattened the curve, and a lot of them didn't understand what I was saying when I said, hey, remember the Frank Starling curve? You just flattened it. And they go, what? And so that was a good time for us to step back. I would act as the technician or the nurse that was going around with them, and I would say, okay, remember in class, and there's even a drawing tool in here, and so I would draw that Frank Starling curve, and I'd go through that instruction with them. Okay, so that was sort of formative. We didn't really focus on summative with this, but let me show you some different scenes, because although this scene, it's cool, but it's really, I consider it to be like one of my retro scenes. So I'm going to open up my menu again. I'm going to go over here to my scenes. And now I'm going to open my library. Now you'll see a ton of scenes in my library. This is not going from one room to another. It's just within the same room, switching the scene around. That's it. Basically what I'm doing is we're in our sim lab, and I'm quickly changing all of the stuff in the sim lab. So I'm going to load the 4-bay PICU, which is I transitioned over to an emergency room. I utilized it for an emergency room. So I'm going to go ahead and load that. It takes just a second here to load. Let me see if I can bring up the Q&A while we're here, just in case. Okay, no questions. Good. I just want to keep that open just in case. And again, feel free, if you have questions, please, by all means, type them into the chat. I'm watching. So again, I was in virtual reality. I was in the headset. I was in there, and this is, when we couldn't meet, right, because of COVID. My student would then come in and they would do all of their, all of the critical thinking required to treat patients. I wouldn't tell them anything. I would let them do all of the critical thinking. So this patient in particular, this is actually a PICU patient, and this patient needs to be intubated, and they go through the entire process of intubating. And this patient, I can change his skin tone and all of that, and he starts to look really, really nasty and really dusky, and just not good. And you can tell he's in serious condition. Again, monitors in all of these rooms that I have control over, so I can change them on the fly in real time with the student. If they're in the headset with me, which we eventually did get to do more often, and we're continuing to do more often. If they're in the headset with me, then they're doing all of the actions, and I'm just sort of behind the scenes, then controlling everything. Our next patient as well is also an intubation. Dr. Slayman set up this PICU, and so Dr. Slayman is sort of the expert on this, but this patient also is a patient who needs intubation as well, and this patient can actually be you can see everything, right? Glottic opening. I mean, the visuals are perfect. If the instructor were to go in here and do a 3D recording, there's a little holocron that would be over here somewhere, or they can put it anywhere they want, that the student would just click on, and then it would show the recording of that instructor going through all of those steps. And I'll show you that here coming in a couple of minutes. And you can see all of our patients, and this is the voicing actually for this patient, because we do have, I found out I did not do the voicing really well of an 8-year-old girl or 7-year-old girl, but my daughter did, although she's 8, and she told me, okay, so Dad, you want me to do a voicing for a 7-year-old girl? I said, yeah. She goes, I'm 8, so I'm gonna have to try. I'm like, honey, you can do this. I know you can. And so if you hear the voicings for this patient, it's actually my daughter, which is kind of cool. And again, feel free, ask any questions you want, shoot them over. I'm more than willing to answer any questions. So I'll show you another one. Let me go into, let's go into an anatomy one. So it just takes a second to load up here. Now, what we eventually did was I would have my students then come into the program itself. Elderly male patient, I just don't feel very well today. I'm sick. You need to just help me and stop asking me a bunch of stupid questions. Pretty good, huh? Pretty good. Not bad. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So then this is a skeleton visualization. Okay. And so when I wanted my students to understand more about bone groups, when I was teaching that initial anatomy portion of my class, so I wanted to, here we can isolate that group, and now we just got the skull, or we can hide. That's creepy. Okay. The other thing is that within these, I can create my own 3D recordings in my own anatomy room. And then I can just have my students hit play on those. Okay. And I'll show you at the end here, I'll show you the Acadicus Commons, and that'll show you a lot of the things that you can actually access for free. You can just download Acadicus. It's acadicus.com, and you can download it, and you can go in viewer mode, or if you have a VR, if you have VR set up, you can go in VR mode and actually see it. Now, in the Commons, you might see other people, so just say hello. It happens. Cost. So it is $10,000 a year for the program, but everything and anything that's in here and already built, you have access to. You have full access to that. And then when it comes to custom development, if you want to do custom development, like we're doing custom development right now, we're building a birthing simulator, because the birthing simulators are good, but like the sounds of birth are, the sound of the piston pushing the baby out, right? we wanted that reality. We wanted blood and fluid, and we wanted screaming, and we wanted all of that. And we also wanted our nursing faculty to be able to use it. So that avatar is switchable from environments. So it can be in a park, it can be on a park bench, they could be at their home, they could be at a condo, they can be in an emergency room, and actually in a delivery room, right? So they could do all of that. So I'm going to just grab another scene, grab one of my favorite scenes. And this is one that I worked really, really hard on with Arch Virtual. And this is our mass casualty incident. So let me load that up. This is also the vast majority of what you're seeing in terms of custom content. A lot of it, I shouldn't say vast majority, that's not fair. A lot of it is developed by Madison College. We have put a lot of money into developing really amazing environments for our students. And then that's open to anyone, right? So this mass casualty that's in here, all you have to do is ask for it to be loaded in the room that you're working in, and then you have access to this mass casualty. You can then change it any which way you like, okay? So some people use start triage, some people use salt triage. Both are available in here. And so, for example, let's go to one of our patients here. Let's go to our really badly injured patient, because he was closer to the blast. The blast was over here. Okay, wait a minute. Anybody tripped out by that? Secondary device? Let's have the police take care of that. Let's go over to our patient over here, though, because we're triaging. So let's go over to our patient. Oh no, this does not look good. All right. This was again one of our developed patients. All right, so let's go through what we have to go through. All right, we check his respiration. He has a respiratory rate of 20. Okay, that's not bad. Reposition his airway. The rate is unchanged. All right. Check his radial to pulse. Oh, he's got a pulse of 65. Well, we better put tourniquets on this to make sure that those stay. A capillary refill takes 1 second. Oh, that's pretty good. Control major bleeding. Okay, now we've controlled the major bleeding. Okay, that's good. That's good. Mental status, able to follow simple commands. Let's assign him to a group. I don't know, just based on the way he looks, let's make him deceased. Right? No, oh, okay, not deceased. Well, that's good. I mean, patient's not deceased. Right. Delayed. Let me try that. Oh, not delayed either. Okay. And, okay, minor. You know what? This patient's minor. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's correct. Now, I actually did this. I put it in here wrong. The reason I put it in here wrong is I wanted you to see that you can actually change all of these on the back end here. And so when I go into my simulation manager, on here, I can choose where that triage patient is, that control panel. And once I've gotten to that control panel, I can then change any of these parameters you can see to be sort of whatever I want. Okay, so I can literally go in, I can have it set up a certain way, a way that I want it, a way that I like it. And then once a student goes through, I can have them go back through again. I can go back in, I can change all of the parameters on these patients. I can change all of the parameters on the back end, right? And then, so let's change his respiratory rate. Let's put his respiratory rate at 4. Let's put his radial pulse. Let's put really bradycardic. That's not good. And unchanged after positioning. His cap refill. Let's make it 3 seconds. Bleeding control is necessary, and then he cannot follow instructions. And in this case, this patient is going to be immediate, right? So we can do that. All right. We can change those actions now on the back end. And now that I've changed those actions on the back end, I've now changed what I'm seeing in my control. So radial pulse is 30, that's not good. Major bleeding, it's not good. Okay. Unable to follow simple commands when this patient's immediate, we'll submit. There you go. So you see now I can change that. I changed that, and that was what I wanted. I wanted control over that. I wanted to be able to go back in and do as many of these mass casualty incidents as I wanted to do in a day. Right? If you've ever tried to do a big mass casualty incident, now right now we have about 15 patients in here. We have some other patients that we're adding in that are like even gorier. but we kind of started off with the minimally gory patients. When you go into VR mode, all of these patients are really, really, realistic and really up in your face. They really feel like you're actually in that area. You can also then do your triaging, figure out where you want everybody to go. And our next step in here is to be able to then have those people placed on each of these mats. So once you click on it, you go to unable to follow some commands. Are you referring to the patient or a specific student? I'm not going to talk about that. And again, like let's say you don't want these cars here, you can actually have these removed. You can remove these from the scene. It's all completely editable. I can edit and remove things from the scene if I want to. We also did one off of the Boston bombing, the Boston Marathon bombing. Actually, a lot of the information from here came from that Boston Marathon bombing. A pediatric respiratory distress. This was one of the 6. So my students would go through the 4-bed ER. They would treat each of those patients, come back, see how their treatments went, make another plan if their treatment was good, if their treatment was bad, whatever it may be. Like with that tension pneumothorax patient, he starts out as a simple pneumothorax, but then when they come back, they find out he's in tension pneumo. Okay. You can hear her respiratory distress here. And so then after the 4-bed ER, I took my students to this patient who is a pediatric respiratory distress. Actually, what it turns out to be is that she has some extrinsic asthma that was triggered by these plants right behind her, the flowers right behind her. So they have to go in and treat the patient. In the med bag are all the meds that they would potentially use for treating this patient. And so this was developed as more of a specific scenario. But what's nice about this is that I can then, let's say I don't want this to be I don't want it to be respiratory distress. I want to change it, and maybe she's hurt her knee, right? And so I want to change it to like a minor trauma. I can do that. So I can just have her sitting down, make it more of a minor trauma and less of a respiratory distress. I can then change all of the parameters on the ECG, make it whichever way I want it to be. And then I can also, if I want to put new medications in here, we have new medications that we're adding every single day, and we can add those medications right in and just have them in the bag. So maybe I need to put a bandage on her, maybe I need to put a cold pack on her knee. Like those things can be done as well. Okay, let me open up my my scene again. And again, in my simulation manager, you can see there's more actions for her. Here's our lung sound board, so we can change our lung sounds again. There are more actions for her, and there are less actions for other patients who are here just sort of as bystanders, or people who are here just sort of as bystanders. The other thing, let me get to my, where is it? My dynamic cardiology scene. I'm going to load my dynamic cardiology scene. This is my favorite. This is the one that during the pandemic, I really wanted my students to get and to see and to focus on, because they had come to the end of cardiology, and we couldn't do dynamic cardiology with them for them to get a chance to practice. And so what I then wanted to do was I wanted to set up a dynamic cardiology scenario in here and allow them to go through dynamic cardiology. And this was the last patient that they saw in the 6 patients. Now I've created a little recording in here just explaining what the dynamic cardiology scene is. I'll play a short bit of it for you so that you see what a 3D recording looks like. Hello, and welcome to the dynamic cardiology room. Think of this room very much like the simulation you've been doing with your mannequin. The difference is, so I'm showing my mannequin over there, and you're in virtual reality. So keep in mind that anything that you would do in simulation, let me stop sharing just for a second, just to make sure, because I wasn't sure that I was sharing my audio. So, oh, I am. Okay, I am. To have his shirt off so that you could put an EKG on him. Okay. You could say to the simulation technician, So again, in a 3D recording, I can kind of go around, I can explore, I can, listen to
look at your patient
end.
just like any other
I
patient.
can kind of go more
You'll
forward.
notice changes in your patient.
The other thing that my
example,
students were
you
able
may
to
notice
do,
right now,
let me go over,
your patient
is
pale.
our monitor is fully capable. I'm standing on the patient.
As your interventions
Come on, Bill.
start to work for
So
your patient
they
and
could
start to
charge
make
the
your
monitor.
patient better,
They
you may
can
notice
do
the skin
dual
tone looks
selecting,
better.
right?
You may also notice that
We also have
skin
in
tone
here Jules for
conforms.
synchronized cardioversion.
So
And then
again,
you also have
treat this
pacing
exactly the
capabilities
same
in
as
here
you
as
would treat
well.
simulation,
Yes, it's a life pack
or
15.
as you would treat
More to
patient
come,
in the field.
but
Now,
there's
let's say in
your
this particular
capabilities.
case,
The student can,
this
in
patient
viewer
needs
mode, place the
CPR.
pads. So if they wanted to place
Ask
the
for it.
pads,
I'd like
they
to
could do
start
that in
CPR,
viewer mode.
please.
But in VR mode, they actually pick the pads up and place them. The other thing is that we know that they're going to start to ask for things like CPR.
If you want to stop CPR,
right? So
I'd like to stop
there's
CPR, please.
recordings in here for, let's say I want to do BVM ventilation.
You can see.
And I want to do CPR,
ask for all the
right?
same
I can
things
actually
that
have
you would
those
ask
going.
for
I have my other
in a
recording
normal
going, so let me
simulation
stop my other recording.
or in the field.
Stop that. Right. And so if I want, let's say they say, all right, let's start an IV. I can click on my, well, not clickable from viewer mode at the moment. Sorry about that. But I can in viewer mode, I have that set to VR mode in my room because I use VR mode the majority of the time. So in VR mode, I can just click that and you'll see CPR come in and start. I can also do BVM. I can have somebody doing BVM. I can have somebody doing an IV med push. But the student is all controlling who does what. So they say, all right, let's go ahead and push 1 milligram of epinephrine. And so I just click the button for IV med push. And then that recording comes in and pushes that IV med and then repeats. Then I can repeat, 1 milligram epinephrine on board. So it's very much like we do with our dynamic cardiology. The other thing is that there's that bystander. There's the patient's wife. And again, what was really cool about this, what was a really good teaching moment, is only 2 of my students went over and talked to her. Only 2 of my students said, "Hi, ma'am. Do you know what's going on today?" Only 2. Everybody else did talk to him. But one of my students, when I had her in VR mode, so I'm going to do one thing with my simulation manager here. When I had her in VR mode, I'm going to put his skin back to default. Okay. So she was in VR mode and I was in VR mode with her. And on the back end, I changed his skin temp and condition from default here, from the normal to pale. And she was looking at him while I did that. And I also had changed the setting on the back end and put him into VFib. And she saw the patient and immediately looked up and went, "Uh-oh, okay, yeah, oh, he looks bad, right?" So that was the reaction I wanted. I wanted her to see that patient and go, "Oh, no, that's not good. That's not good," right? And then she also noticed he wasn't breathing. And that was when she said, "All right, let's go ahead and get CPR started and then charge the monitor." And I mean, she went through exactly what I expected her to go through. And that was when she was in VR mode. So she just did it herself. She immediately charged the monitor and she, selected the joules that she wanted, shocked the patient. And then here, I'll charge the monitor. Right. And then once it charges, then I shock the patient. And so she was doing all of that in real time with me in there evaluating. Okay. And then we did finally have multiplayer. We had, this was already set up for multiplayer. It's just, we had to get all the students together. And so we had the students together, we had the room to work in, and we had them in multiplayer, and then they were working as a team in there, which was really cool. And once a month we do cardiac arrest scenarios. So you can find them on acadicus.com. We do cardiac arrest scenarios. I lead a cardiac arrest scenario. And you can actually see how it all works. And then there are recordings of that actually on Acadicus as well. Ambulance patient compartment. Yes, we actually have that scene that we're building currently. The problem that we found with the ambulance compartment is if you accidentally got out of that compartment, like in VR mode, you would be outside of the ambulance. And so it was really a weird feeling. So what we eventually did was just make the entire scene, the inside of the ambulance, and just, made the scale feel a little bit smaller. That's currently in the development and on its way out. So, and then some of the newer scenes as well. So you can see all of these. I'll kind of scroll through these slowly so that you can see what I'm choosing here. Right. So we work with our dental program. Programs that are using it at Madison College are disability resources. They're using it as a way for faculty members to learn how to interact with students who have neurodivergent learning needs. So that was one of the things that we really wanted to do. We're our Botany program. So our Botany program is actually bringing the students to Mars and then having the students make decisions on what plants would work best to support life on Mars. If they were going to do that. And it's kind of cool because like some use more water and some use more, and I don't really understand the botany all that well. Our HVAC program, we have an HVAC simulator. I know nothing about the HVAC simulator except how to make the thing spew gas everywhere. And the key with that was that we wanted the student to have that experience. We wanted them to go in, experience the HVAC simulator before they then went into the HVAC lab and actually worked with it in the HVAC lab, because we know that in the HVAC lab, they're using real gas. They can actually freeze their fingers. They can have, these gases that are not environmentally friendly, spewing out everywhere. And then we have a huge problem. And so they learned how to use the HVAC system and work the HVAC system before they then went in the lab. So people didn't necessarily replace parts of their classes. They just added to it, right? This wasn't about, completely, getting rid of HVAC simulation altogether. The students are never going to touch an HVAC before they touch an HVAC at a customer's house. No, not at all. They would still go in, they'd still do their HVAC simulation, but they worked on these simulators first. The ones that were safe, they could spew gas everywhere in this thing because it's not going to hurt them, and there's not going to be any frozen fingers. Okay. In our cardiology rooms, I think this one has the big old heart that's in there. That was my original heart. And I'll show you that. Any questions, please feel free. Ask questions. There's the heart. There it is. This is my cardiac room. Oh. I haven't used it quite as much because I'm not teaching EMS students anymore. But yeah, there's my heart. All right. And then I can stop it from beating just to, go over things. And then again, when I'm in virtual reality, I can pick this up. I can bring it up close to the camera. I can show it to them. I can explain it to them. I can go through the parts of the heart. I can make a 3D recording. I can manipulate the heart. They can manipulate the heart. So if they come in virtual reality, they can actually grab the heart from my hand while I'm in the middle of the recording, look at something, and then put it back. So it's pretty neat. And then again, here are my 3D recordings, right? So just put a 3D recording in there. All right. Oops. Stop sharing. Oh, screen share stopped. Well, interesting. All right. Well, I'll stop sharing for just a second. And I want to make sure that there's some, if you have questions, you shoot them out. We got about 6 minutes. I do a lot of talking, and I love showing the environments that we utilized. What you saw was like the very, very tip of the iceberg. If you want to actually see even some of the stuff that we've developed at Madison College, you can go to the Academy Commons. Again, it's free, and this is not a sales pitch. You can go to the Academy Commons. It's free. You can check it out. You see if it's right for you, if it's going to work for your program. The main thing for us was to keep that connection between instructor and student intact, so that when we were in an environment, we were in that environment together. That was what we wanted. Questions? I have both Q&A open and the chat open, so feel free. I'm going to look through the participants and see if I know anybody. No. Let's see. Bob Page. All right. Brian Wilcox. Brian, I think I might know you. I'm not sure though. David, your name looks familiar, but I can't remember where I might have met you. You know, I meet, sometimes what'll happen is I'll meet people at NAEMSE or something like that. And it's like, oh, I remember their name. And then I don't remember where exactly I met them. Well, there's a few names I might recognize in here. Well, hello to all of you, even if I don't know you or I don't recognize you, thanks for coming. I will put my email address in the chat here. Feel free to contact me. If you have questions, feel free. I love talking about this stuff. I love helping people implement it. That is one of the things that I do. Thank you, Anthony. That's very nice of you. Yeah, I'd love to meet. That is one of the things that I do also for Arch Virtual is I help people understand how to utilize it in their class. Because a lot of times you get in there and you kind of go, I don't know what in the world I'm supposed to do with this thing. And the last thing that anybody wants is to spend money on something, right? And then not know how to use it and not know how to implement it. And then what happens? This thing starts to get cobwebs, right? And you're just like, well, that was a waste of money. By the way, I use a Rift S. If anybody's wondering, this is a Rift S. It is PCVR, so it is connected PCVR. Although wireless VR is catching up, and there's a very good possibility that this is going to work with wireless VR very, 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 very soon in the next year, I'm thinking. But it works with, we also use the Valve Index, the HP Reverb 2, and the HTC Vive Pro, and then of course our Oculus Rift S. So if you have questions about headsets, I'm good there. Let me put my email address in here. And here it is, wballo@madisoncollege.edu. I work for Madison College full-time. That's what I do. And instructional design is sort of my thing. I'm not like, I didn't go to school for instructional design. I just really know how to leverage technology and to help instructors utilize technology in their classes. So please, by all means, you have questions, feel free. Shout out to me, reach out to me, not a problem at all. Always happy to help people and talk to people. And just make sure that you go, I saw your presentation at NAEMSE or in the NAEMSE webinar so that I know where you're from. So.
All right, well, thank you so much, Bill. That was definitely a unique webinar. That was fantastic. Everyone, that recording will be up on our YouTube channel, so you can go back and reference that anytime. I just put the link in the chat to register for the CE for today's webinar. And I will be sure to include your email address in the follow-up email tomorrow, as well as the website. And I think that's everything. So thank you again, Bill. And if anyone—
One last thing for all of those innovators out there, don't be afraid to innovate, right? Don't be afraid to use new things and try new things. I've had 3 things that have been used as pejoratives for me, okay? That I'm too nice, that I'm too creative, and that I'm free-spirited in the sense of, how I utilize things in my class. Those are the greatest 3 pejoratives I've ever been called. So please, by all means, if you're an innovator, keep innovating, whatever you use, and if you're looking to do it, you absolutely can do it. Don't ever think, hey, I can't do that. Yes, you can. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.